Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto trained outside the village with Tenten, while Hinata, Sakura, and Ino fought for his heart part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. The sun was shining, providing a warm pleasant day for the citizens of Konohagakure no Sato, the hidden village in the leaves. Everyone wore going about their everyday business as usual, whether they're shopkeepers, shinobi, teachers, mechanics, etc. Another typical day as any other. However, if one were a mind reader and focused on one particular man walking down a street, one would be able to see the perverted thoughts he was having. People around him gave him breathing room, and some even bowed to him. Yet some women scowled, especially knowing how big a pervert the man was. For this was Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha and Toad Sennin. Despite his personality, he was one of the strongest ninja in the entire Leaf Village. At the moment, Jiraiya was giving a leering grin, making some wonder what he was thinking. Knowing the shinobi, some thought he was thinking of peeping at the hot springs or writing up the next edition of the Ika Ika book series, which he was mostly known for. Yet no one was close to what the white-haired man was actually thinking. Well, Naruto, I can't stick around to wait for you to come back from your mission, but I know you'll be quite surprised with the present I left for you. You'll be the center of attention, if you use it. A lot of female attention. A perverted giggle escaped his lips as he made way toward the main gates. His mind conjured up mental images of his apprentice in compromising positions. Entering his apartment, Uzumaki Naruto felt tired as he turned on the lights. He was a bit physically drained due to that crazy race Guy Sensei had started from Suna all the way back to Konoha. Not only that, the entire day had been challenging for him to find that third teammate for his team, or else Tsunade Bachan would not allow his team to go on the mission to meet Sasori's spy, who was implanted within Orochimaru's ranks. It would be the first time in years he and Sakura-chan would have a lead to finding Sasuke. Dropping his backpack at the entrance to his bedroom, Naruto went into the kitchen to pull out a bottle of juice from the refrigerator. After taking a long chug of the refreshing liquid, the blonde boy sighed in satisfaction. He thanked Kami he had enough time to stock his kitchen just prior to the mission to rescue Gaara from the Akatsuki. It would not do him any good if his coffers had been bared. Thinking back to what had happened to him in the past 10 days, Naruto, Konoha's Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, was at least glad he had met all his friends now. He had missed them all during the nearly 3 years he had been away on the training trip with Jiraiya, but now that he was back, he would definitely work hard to be the best shinobi he could be and show everyone what he was capable of. A yawn unexpectedly escaped his mouth, prompting the genin shinobi to put away the juice bottle and head toward his bedroom after turning off the kitchen lights. I feel like I could sleep for an entire day, he murmured, thinking of the soft mattress of his bed. It was close to 9 p.m., and despite the fact that he had yet to unpack from the mission, he just wanted to change into his sleepwear and hit the sack. He would unpack tomorrow. Walking past his backpack into his bedroom, Naruto was about to unzip his black-orange jacket, when something caught his eyes. A small cylindrical object with a green cap was on top of his dresser. Curious, the teen strolled over and picked it up in his hand. Sage deodorant. He spoke out what he read in bafflement. He certainly had not bought this, that was for sure. Yet finding a letter attached, he began reading and realized immediately who was responsible for leaving the item. Hi there, Gaki. While you were away rescuing Gaara from the Akatsuki, I hope to hear you came out of this okay. Kami, help me, if you were captured, I managed to get my hands on an experimental product I've been working on with a potential business partner. What you have is a deodorant I hope to put on the market one day. Use it, and when I come back, tell me what you think. I'm predicting it will make a great hit, especially with the ladies. Giggle. I'll see you the next time I'm in the village. Take care of yourself, Gaki. Jiraiya. Folding up the letter, Naruto grinned and shook his head. Ero Sennin, I hope you're not up to something with this. He placed down the letter on the dresser and proceeded to change into his pajamas. Once he was ready for bed, he turned off his bedroom lights before scurrying under the bed covers. Right now, he was just too tired to think about what his Sanin sensei was up to with this deodorant. He would find out eventually anyway, like he always did regarding the so-called super pervert. As he closed his blue eyes, Naruto was glad he has the next 2 days off. The mission, to meet Sasori's spy, would not start until 3 days from now, especially since they had yet to find a third teammate. This would give him plenty of time to unpack and use his free time to train. With his plan for tomorrow all set, the golden-haired boy fell asleep, enjoying the soft mattress and pillow as he dreamed of ramen, being Hokage, ramen, being Hokage, ramen. The sounds of steel meeting wood were heard in the forest, and anyone close by could tell that the sounds were actually made by kunai hitting the hardwood of either training posts or trees. It would come to no surprise to anyone in Konoha to hear such things, for after all, if one ventured out to one of the dozens of trainings areas around the village, one would expect to hear the various sounds of shinobi training to keep their skills sharp or to learning something new. This was precisely what a brown-haired kunoichi was doing as she flung dozens of kunai and shuriken at the many bull's-eye targets situated on trees and posts in the forest her team mostly used for training. Her brown eyes were sharp and focused, guiding her hands to throw the weapons with amazing precision that she ended up hitting the very center of the bull's eyes without flaws. Her name was Takashi Tenten, 17-year-old kunoichi of Team Gaian known throughout the village as the weapons mistress of Konoha. When it came to any handheld steel weapon, this young woman knew how to use them all with deadly accuracy. Currently, she was alone while training, and this suited her just fine. After being with her team for many days on 2 back-to-back missions, with the last one being an A rank to rescue Suna's cage, the teenage girl needed some alone time. Despite the fact that she cared for her team very much, it would drive her crazy to see them even on her days off. Kami, she truly needed to get away from Guy-sensei and Lee's flames of youth, or else she would go insane. Grinning in knowing Guy and Lee were training elsewhere while Neji had some business with his clan, Tenten felt satisfied that she was definitely all alone now and her day would go smoothly without problems. After flinging more sharp weapons at her targets, her trained sixth sense felt a presence behind her, and judging from it, it was not any of her male colleagues from Team Guy despite the fact that the individual was definitely a guy. He felt familiar, but she couldn't place it. Nevertheless, she was not going to let the person think she was not aware of him. With quick reflexes, Tenten pulled out a kunai from one of her storage scrolls and twisted around to throw the knife in the direction of the guy. It embedded into the tree he was standing next to, startling him in the process. Whoa, easy, Tenten, I'm not an enemy. Tenten blinked upon recognizing him. Naruto, what are you doing here? Naruto came forward with a small grin. To train, he answered. This training field provides a lot of targets for kunai and shuriken practicing. Not to mention trees to use my ninjutsu against. Allowing a grin to form on her face, Tenten chastised herself for not figuring out the obvious. Even before he left on his training trip with Jiraiya, Naruto had been known to be quite a hard worker when it came to training, much like Lee. Well, you're welcome to train with me, if you want. Thanks, Tenten, he replied. You're welcome, she spoke back. It's not like I have a monopoly on this training field. Any registered shinobi from the village is welcome to train here. They softly laughed at this. With her laughter dying off, the brunette kunoichi excitedly spoke up. So how was your training trip with Jiraiya-sama? The Suna mission didn't give much time for social interactions, especially with that race guy sensei made us do yesterday. I bet you learned a lot, right? The blonde boy gave a huge grin. You bet I learned a lot, he exclaimed, before he frowned a bit. That is, when we weren't constantly on the move. I learned early on that I couldn't get much training done, since we never stayed in one place for long. Tenten frowned as well, but for a different reason. Are you saying that you spent most of your time on the move? How can you learn anything while mostly on the move? That's what I asked Ero Sennin. Just he needs to be on the move in order to stay in contact with his spy network. I learned many things, but not as much as I want. This time, the bun-haired girl placed her hands on her hips. Are you saying you didn't learn much at all, Naruto? Sounds like your training trip was for nothing, if you have not advanced. Naruto felt offended. Hey, I said I learned many things. He thumbed his chest, before a challenging grin appeared on his face. How about I show you what I can do? At first Team Guy's Kunoichi raised an eyebrow, before her lips curled up to match his challenging grin. You're on, Naruto. You better hope you can keep up with me. I'm not going to go easy on you. Remember, I'm very good in hitting my mark, so you better be on your toes, much like Lee, or else you'll end up like a pincushion. Just bring it on, Tenten. I'm going to win. Datboyo. He finished with a raised fist. Konoha's weapons mistress laughed at her colleague's spirit. Despite him having grown taller and no doubt built up muscles, Naruto still had that same spirit he had 3 years ago. A drive to not ever give up, no matter the odds. Now that she could examine him fully, the teenage girl had to admit he looked cute. Walking up to stand in front of her challenger, Tenten couldn't help but parry his declaration. Did you know that you're the only genin left in our entire group of the Konoha 11? She teased. I outrank you, Naruto. Yeah, so I heard. Naruto frowned a bit but immediately perked up. That just means I have to train harder and get that promotion. After all, I'm going to be Hokage one day, and I'm not going to be Hokage if I stay stuck as a genin. That was another thing Tenten saw that had not changed. Naruto was not a quitter, and she couldn't help but admire him for taking things in stride and not let his rank get him down. Good, she replied before taking several steps back, where her hands swiftly produced 8 shuriken, one between each finger space. Her wicked grin made Naruto realize the game was about to begin. Now show me what you can do, Naruto. She cried out before tossing the sharp projectiles at the blonde boy, who speedily jumped into the trees. From that point onward, the game was afoot. As the battle raged, Tenten have to admit that Naruto certainly knew how to use his Kage Bunshin better than the time he had fought Neji in the Chunin exams. He was not just wildly tossing the clones at her. They were at times coordinated, with some distracting her, while others tried to attack her. Even his combo use of Kawamori with Kage Bunshin made him unpredictable, not to mention at times she couldn't tell who was the real Naruto and who was a Kage Bunshin. After dispatching a dozen clones at the same time with a small rain of kunai, the mistress of weapons realized that she was having fun. Far more fun that she had with her own team. Naruto's Kage Bunshin made for the ideal training technique for her, since she didn't have to worry about harming anyone. With no fear of hurting or killing the real Naruto, Tenten knew she could go full out on the blonde. Naruto too was having fun. Only once had he ever seen Tenten fought, and that was during the Chunin exams against Temari. Yet now that he was viewing her skills firsthand, he admitted that Tenten was skilled and knowledgeable in her profession. Heck, from the amazing speeds in which she could conjure up weapons, it was clear she definitely had improved since fighting Temari. For this, the whisker-faced boy felt admiration for the young Kunoichi, thus he was determined more than before to show Tenten what he was capable of. Many minutes passed, and the battlefield was looking quite worn with broken trees, smoking wood, and a few small craters on the ground. Tenten was a bit winded, but she was still standing with her scrolls splayed out before her, as she faced 24 Kage Bunshin Narutos surrounding her. Her expression was a mix of defiance, challenge, and laughter. Don't think I'm giving up yet, Naruto. I don't expect you to give up, one Naruto smirked, matching those of his brothers. Yeah, another spoke out. Just we're not going to give up either. Then meet your doom, hollered out the brunette before leaping into the air. From there, Her scrolls produced a large rain of steel weapons in all direction around her, taking out many of the buncheons. Yet once she landed next to a tree, several clones pounced on her, but not before she whipped out a katana and began defending herself, especially when the clones began throwing kunai and shuriken back at her. However, being so focused on the attacking cage buncheons, she was not aware one of the embedded kunai on the tree that happened to be the real Naruto using a henge. By the time Naruto undid the henge and came into existence in a puff of smoke, Tenten was right below him for him to drop down and grab her. She barely had time to turn around before her wrists were made immobile by his clenching hands, and soon after, a few of the remaining buncheons took hold of her legs with similar strength. Unable to move her arms and legs or throw off her captors, Tenten knew the game was now over. So, Naruto smugly began, looking into brown defiant eyes. Are you going to surrender? Tenten tried once more to twist her hands free but to no avail. Only then did she give a small defeated chuckle. To be honest, Naruto, I don't think I can go any further. With a nod toward the winner, she accepted the outcome. I surrender. With a proud grin, the blonde genin released his prisoner followed by his clones. I gotta say, that was the most fun I ever had out of a training fight. You've improved greatly, Tenten. Thank you, Tenten proudly replied with a small blush as she sealed away her katana in her weapons scroll. You've improved greatly yourself, Naruto. You're better coordinated with your cage buncheon compared to the time you fought Neji in the Chunin exams. This time it was Naruto's turn to blush a bit as he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Thanks, Tenten. With that said, he ordered his remaining clones to pick up all the weapons lying on the field to pile them up for Tenten, who was grateful for the help. It was just then that Tenten's nose picked up a strong scent. It was musky, sweaty, and definitely male, and upon taking a few more whiffs, she realized it was coming from the blonde boy right in front of her. Her breath hitched a bit, when Naruto unzipped his black-orange jacket, allowing her brown eyes to feast on the toned, muscular chest he has under a tight black t-shirt. I need to cool off, Naruto explained with a small grin, not aware of his companion's change in breathing rate. It's a little hot today. You bet it's hot today, the weapons mistress proclaimed sultry in her mind. You grew up quite well, Naruto. Nice toned chest, dashing face, beautiful blue eyes. Kami, you're handsome. Tenten mentally shook her head as she turned away from the male visitor. What am I saying? This is Naruto I'm talking about here. A goofball, who shouts, jokes, and so naive at times that it makes him look like an idiot. Picking up his scent again, Tenten couldn't help but to take a long sniff, the smell so heady that it was making her head a bit dizzy. But I can't deny he has grown up, she admitted just before she turned her head enough to look at Naruto from the sides. At that moment, the brunette realized another reaction her body was producing. An ache between her legs was growing stronger, and as it grew, the more her mind was focused on Naruto, especially since it was giving her visual images of him and sweaty next to her own unclothed body. Once more pulling her gaze away from Naruto, Tenten just couldn't believe what was happening to her. Kami, I've become horny. How could I be so turned on all of a sudden for Naruto? The moment his name was mentally mentioned, mental images of him having with her made the heat within her rise even higher. She was startled with a yelp out of her thoughts upon feeling a hand on her right shoulder, and quickly seeing it was Naruto, she tried to calm herself. What's wrong, Tenten? Is something a matter? Trying not to show her situation, Team Guy's Kunoichi shook her head and gave a reassuring grin. I'm fine, Naruto. Just tired, that's all. Seeing his buncheons had now gathered a large pile of weapons, Tenten broke from his touch and walked toward the cache of steel. I better get started sealing away these weapons, she spoke over her shoulder at her sparring partner. As the older girl began sealing away her weapons, Naruto threw a confused and concerned look at a few of his passing clones, whom were just as confused as their boss. The cage buncheons shrugged and continued delivering the retrieved weapons until they were all done. Only then did they all dispel, leaving a still confused real Naruto on why Tenten was acting so strangely. Meanwhile, Tenten was doing her best to stay focused on sealing away her arsenal and not think about Naruto or even in particular. The sooner she was finished, the sooner she could get away from here and return home. Only then she could focus on relieving her UAL thirst in private with a few toys she had. Maybe she could take a very cold shower as well. However, as the last weapon disappeared in a small cloud of smoke into her weapon's scroll, her nostrils picked up that musky scent again while at the same time her ears heard footsteps approaching her from behind. Hanging her head, Tenten knew right there that she would not be going back home, for his scent was too strong for her to pull away. Her loins were aching for him, and only he could put out the fire. As she knelt on the ground, she knew what she needed to do, and after she rolled up her scroll and secured it, Tenten rose and turned around to gaze directly at Naruto. She allowed her lips to form a small grin upon seeing his concern for her. Before he had left on his training trip, the blonde boy had shown many times he cared deeply for all his friends and people he considered close to him, and now, his expression displayed that same devotion. The brunette knew she could trust him, especially knowing she was considered one of his friends. Naruto took a few steps closer. Tenten, are you really alright? If there's a problem, is there anything I can do to help? Tenten smiled a bit sheepishly as she chuckled. Leave it to Naruto to give her the opening she needed. Yeah, you can say I have a problem, Naruto. Something you caused, and I hope you can resolve it. Now his expression showed he was really troubled yet at the same time confused. What did I do? Taking a few steps to stand close to him, Tenten did her best to ignore the severe smell that was increasing her desire. To be honest, you have a strong scent that is turning me on. It's driving me crazy. Strong scent, turning you on, repeated a baffled Naruto. I'm horny, Naruto, the bun-haired girl further explained. Blue eyes went wide in understanding, and now that he thought about it, only one thing he did in the morning could explain this scent Tenten was talking about. Damn you, Ero Sennin. I'm going to kick your pervy for this. Giving a reassuring smile, Tenten reached over and took his left hand in her right. I see you now understand the situation. I need you to have with me, Naruto. I'm so horny now that I just can't wait. Naruto was at a loss for words, not to mention scared. Here was Tenten, needing him to have with her, but he just didn't know whether he could go through with it. What about Sakura-chan? Would he jeopardize any chances he had with her? I don't know. Please, Naruto, pleaded Tenten as she gazed into his eyes. Hearing that, please, and seeing those deep pleading brown eyes were all he needed to make a decision. Tenten needed him, and he was not the type to ever turn away any of his friends who needed help. With a small shy grin, Naruto nodded his consent. All right, Tenten, just tell me what you want me to do. Smiling warmly that her friend was going to lend a hand in reducing her UAL desire, the teenage Kunoichi picked up her huge scroll with her left hand before taking his left hand in her right. She guided her soon-to-be lover away from the training area, deeper into the forest. Several minutes later, the pair found a soft patch of grass next to a wide tree with sunlight streaming through the leaves from overhead. Tenten apparently thought this was a perfect spot, for she tossed her scroll on the ground to the left of the tree before facing Naruto with lust in her eyes. Despite her wearing high-heeled kunoichi sandals, he was just slightly taller than her, yet she couldn't care less. Tenten pulled her partner forward to plant a firm kiss on his lips. At first, he didn't return it, but after a few moments, Tenten felt his arms wrap around her back and the next thing she knew, Naruto was kissing back eagerly. She nearly swooned at how good Naruto was at this, especially when she opened her mouth to allow his tongue access. Where did he learn how to kiss like this? Liquid tongue touching hers and his breath entering her mouth were making her dizzy, therefore she couldn't help but to in approval. Breaking the lip lock out of need for air, Tenten panted a bit as she stared at him, but a moment later, she grinned sultry at her whisker-faced male friend. I'm guessing this is not the first time you kissed a girl. Right, Naruto. Naruto softly chuckled, his cheeks pinking to match hers. Yeah, you can say that, Tenten. Good. Tenten purred in approval as she rubbed her hands over his t-shirt covered chest just before reaching up to push off his jacket. Only then did the turned-on girl once more pulled Naruto's head forward to latch her mouth over his in a searing kiss, and when she felt his hand behind her neck to pull her more onto his mouth, the brunette edged in endorsement of his actions. As the kiss deepened and tongues came into play, Tenten knew it was but a taste compared to what was to come, and it was going to be good. Starts here. After a minute or two, the pair broke for air. Yet the brunette began immediately kissing and ing along her partner's cheek, and when she felt his body trembled after she gave a slow along one whisker mark, Tenten smiled wickedly, knowing she already found one of his pleasure spots. She ground her pelvis against his, purring at the feel of his manhood hardening against her body. Naruto softly growled, not only from her touch but from her scent as well. Now he was close enough to pick up the smell of her hair, sweat, and the faint trace of her arousal. He latched his mouth over her exposed neck, causing her to. He smirked upon hearing her. I'm not going to be the only one ing, he softly said against her skin before he renewed his assault with kisses, small nips and bits along her neck and jaw. Ing from that wonderful skilled mouth on her neck, Tenten undid his hitai, and moment later, she felt his hand untie hers. Show me what you got, Whisker Boy, she nearly purred as they tossed away their headbands. The teenage girl groaned when that same masculine hand groped one of her kneading the tit through her clothes. Whisker Boy, Naruto chuckled before his mouth molded over hers for a deep kiss. A minute later, he broke to the kiss much to her mewing displeasure. I just need a nickname for you, he said with a smirk, his cerulean orbs locked on lustful chocolate eyes. His hand pinched her hardened through her clothes, making her yelp in pleasure. How about weapons, girl? With that said, he reengaged the deep, tongue-tying kiss, making her in welcoming his mouth on hers. Having enough of him dominating her for the moment, the horny kunoichi boldly palmed his crotch, making her softly laugh in his mouth upon hearing and feeling his groan. When she grabbed his manhood through his pants, she was awarded with a loud as he pulled his mouth away from hers. Even though his pants was in the way, just by feeling it through the material was enough for Tenten to tell that Naruto's sword was no small fry. You have one hell of a weapon here, lover, she said erotically. I'm going to enjoy riding you hard. Growling at how wonderful her hand was stroking him with his pants on, Naruto fought back and plunged his hand past the elastic of her red pants and cupped her wet panties. The surprised move made her shriek in ecstasy as she tossed her head back. She edged loudly afterward, when his fingers began molding over the lips of her wet vagina. As her brain currently was focused on the fingering her femininity was receiving, Tenten barely noticed her lover's other hand was undoing the clasps of her Chinese blouse. Her own hands assisted his efforts, and it was not long before her blouse fell to the ground, making her quiver a bit from the slight chill of her heated skin meeting cool air. Pausing his work on her soaked, Naruto examined her exposed chest, making the year-and-a-half-older girl smirk lustfully at him. Enjoying the view, Whisker Boy? She asked while her hands cupped and kneaded her S. The blonde could only nodded to answer. Her S were held up by a black kunoichi bra, which has a single strap going diagonally from one shoulder to her chest's opposite side. The strap was fixed to a metal ring, which held the bra up in place. Yet what really caught his attention was that her two tits were nice and full, being on par close to Temari's from what he saw of the Suna kunoichi. Loving seeing those blue eyes so mesmerized on her, Team Guy's female warrior felt a huge sense of power and deep gratification to know her body spellbound Naruto. It made her feel more lovely and feminine in the process, and after she idly crossed her arms in order to pull off her bra over her head, Tenten edged her lips when he did the same upon seeing her chest totally. Naruto did not hesitate as he began to kiss, and led on one bosom, causing his lovely partner to coo in. He paid attention to the areola, thinking their pretty pink color matched well with the coloring of the surrounding skin. Her sounds of pleasure were music to his ears, especially after he plunged his other hand underneath her panties and fingered her heat directly, causing her to emit a shout that boosted his pride. Tenten once more couldn't believe how skilled Naruto was in this. Those fingers were wonderfully touching her sheath in a way that was making her mind go numb, and combined that with his mouth on her tit, she was sent rocketing toward the sky. With one hand behind her lover's head to encourage him to continue lavishing her, the brunette was about to think it was time to reciprocate him when she felt two of his fingers thrusted hard into her womanhood, making her cry out loudly again. Unable to do anything, she clutched the blonde to her, as his fingers rapidly moved in and out of her. Eyes closed while panting, the young woman edged again when she felt another spark go up her spine. Cammy, ooh, I'm going to die. I'm so close. Her induced brain could not think of anything but those two digits touching the inner walls of her wet and hot vagina. The pressure was building and she knew it was only a matter of time before it burst. When his thumb suddenly rubbed hard against her orris, she arched her back and felt the dam break. Letting out the most primal scream she ever produced, Tenten rode the waves of ecstasy that rocked over her. She ed long as her kept pulsing and releasing into that wonderful hand. For the first time in her life, she had not ever came so hard, and when she finally came down from the peak, the lithe female ninja slumped forward, her left cheek resting on the top of her lover's head as she panted and enjoyed the softness of this golden mane. Meantime, Naruto's own heart rate has accelerated upon seeing and hearing Tenten shuddered through an intense orgasm. Despite that he had first agreed to do this to help her as a friend in need, his own tool was now aching badly for the woman resting against his body. His instincts were shouting for him to rip their remaining clothes off and mate with her forcefully. Yet he stood still, knowing better to ever do that, for he waited for his friend to calm down before he would try anything. Upon feeling her breathing has slowed back to a normal pace, Naruto gently pulled slightly away from her, causing Tenten to raise her head in the process. Brown eyes watched as he removed his hand from her soaked crotch and edged the liquid off his fingers. The sight was quite erotic to the young woman as she softly edged. "You taste good, Tenten," Naruto admitted, his smoldering eyes never leaving hers. Unable to help herself, Tenten pulled his dirty hand toward her before ing a couple of fingers into her mouth. Her lustful orbs still locked on his blue ones, she edged at the divine taste of her essence. She was very pleased upon seeing his breath hitched. With one final long, the aroused girl removed the fingers from her mouth before ing around the edges. "You're right. It tastes so good," she purred. Her actions and words were the finally straw for Konoha's Jinchuriki, for he definitely must have her. He powerfully pulled her body flushed against his and ravished her open mouth in a deep-heated kiss that made both edge and groaned. As she welcomed the liquid fire of his tongue dueling with hers, Tenten knew she couldn't wait for the final act. Her core was still burning hotly despite her recent release, and she knew there was only one way to put out the fire. Reluctantly breaking the lip lock, much to his displeasure as well, the weapon's mistress kept her eyes locked with his to make certain she get her point across. "I need you now, Naruto," she said, her voice hoarse with desire. Getting the message, Naruto stepped back to quickly eliminate the rest of his clothes at the same time he watched Tenten did the same while watching him, which included the wraps around her thighs and hips. By the time both were fully, as the day they were born, the male genin couldn't help but to admire the womanly form that stood before him. Being a kunoichi, the hard work and training had given Tenten a well-toned body, especially noticeable in her abs and nicely flat stomach. Her chest, curves, and shapely legs displayed her femininity beautifully. Her slanted brown eyes and angular face were exotic to match well with her hair buns, which were the same color as the small, trimmed patch above her. Overall, Naruto had not ever noticed her beauty, until now. Seeing Naruto like this, the brunette couldn't help but to admire how much he had grown. His face was sharp, having lost his baby look. His eyes were a mesmerizing blue to match superbly with those golden locks, which matched with the hair between his legs. Arms and legs were nicely toned with muscles, and his chest and stomach were hard with no fat in sight. Tenten saw a handsome and dashing young man that most women in the village would drool over. Without even thinking about, Naruto spoke out what was on top of his mind. "You're beautiful," he spoke with admiration. Despite her body being taunt with UAL desire, Tenten felt her heart skipped upon hearing the compliment. With a genuine warm smile, she took the few steps to mold her body against his before kissing him in gratitude for making her feel very attractive. Gently pushing him down onto the soft grass without disengaging their lips, the aroused brown-haired woman straddled her lover, and loving the feel of his hard stick rubbing against her moist womanhood. As she grinded down, she was aware he was grinding back, sending new sparks of pleasure through their beings. Breaking the kiss with a smooch, Tenten sat up with her hands on his abs as she smiled seductively. "Ready for the main event, Naruto? I know we're both going to enjoy this." She raised herself enough for her to grab his manhood, and after giving his several wonderful strokes, causing him to a bit, the brunette Kunoichi lodged his tip against her wet entrance. Both quivered at the contact prior to her closing her eyes and began to slowly descend. Once more, both edged and shuddered, as his thick stick spread her inner walls, until he was all the way inside when his hands latched onto her waist. Only then did both savor the union between them. For him, it was incredible to feel hot wetness surrounding him with a soft grip. For her, she had not ever felt so full to the brim with thickness and length stretching her insides wonderfully. It was a moment of utopia for the pair. Opening her lust-filled eyes, Tenten stared down at Naruto as her hips began to move. It was a slow pace, allowing her to relish the feel of this sword leaving her before entering again. The sparks of pleasure radiating from her core made her groan, and when she saw him opened his eyes, the lovely brunette edged even louder upon seeing those gorgeous blues filled with desire and longing for her. Wanting and needing more, she picked up the speed, loving and in desire as the pleasure increased. Unable to stay inactive, not with this exquisite woman driving him crazy, Naruto gripped her waist and began rapidly moving his hips. Tenten's cries of ecstasy told him she was thrilled with his actions, watching her close her eyes and toss her head around as she matched his strokes. It was an erotic sight to see her pant and move like she was possessed, and it was enough to make him equally fixate on her. Leaning down a bit to better use her hips, the lovely brunette groaned as her lovers hit her special spot as it continued to plunge in and out of her wet, hot core. The intense UAL bliss was driving her toward new heights that she had not ever experienced before, and she loved it. When he had hit her spot again, the electrical shock coursed through her body, causing Tenten to loudly once more and made her mouth speak words her partner had not ever heard her utter before. "Oh oh 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 oh, me. Give me more. Come on. Oh 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 oh, Naruto. Me good." Those dirty words were the final straw for the blonde young man, for he sat up, wrapped his arms around his beautiful partner, and increased the assault on her womanhood, while he latched his mouth over one pink. Naruto watched with extreme lust as she flung her head backward and screamed at the double attack on her body, as her arms immediately wrapped strongly around his shoulders and head. When she brought her head back up, he raised his head for his mouth to hungrily devoured hers, swallowing hers while their tongues dueled heatedly. Pulling her mouth away, Tenten ed loudly once more before opening her brown orbs to look deeply in blue eyes burning with fire. She was turned on by the sight of Naruto covered in sweat and his blonde locks quite disheveled, not to mention the feel of his body against her as his manhood still chugged away inside her. Feeling the tension in her core drawing ever tighter, the girl knew the explosion was coming and it was going to be huge. Naruto couldn't help but feel even more stir up on the gorgeous vision before him. The sweat covering Tenten's toned body gave a soft sheen. Strands of hair were flying loose from her buns, giving her a wild, attractive look. Yet most importantly were those twin chocolate eyes filled with blazing passion for him. The erotic feminine picture made him groan, feeling the pressure between his legs was nearing a breaking point. He knew he was going to erupt explosively. Crying out as Naruto's mouth covered her neck with kisses, and nips, Tenten closed her eyes and tilted her head for him to gain better access. She felt him grunt as his arms tightened around her and his felt like it grew a bit more, widening her channel in the process. His hoarse words verified to her what was happening to him. Ten, I'm going to come. Where? It's okay. The brunette called out, her arms and hands gripping him strongly. Fill me. She paused to cry out again in passion. Come in me. She said loudly. Come with me. Her words were the final straw for the blonde teenage boy. With one final plunge of his to the roots within her, Naruto closed his eyes, buried his face in the juncture of her neck, and hollered out his release as stream after stream of hot semen shot into Tenten. His brain couldn't focus on anything else but the intense pleasure pulsating from his manhood as he felt her walls clamped around him and his ears picked up her scream of pleasure. He just wanted the powerful feeling to go on without end. The moment she felt the first jets of his essence hit her walls and flowed into her womb, the dam burst for Tenten as she was sent rocketing skyward. With a long scream filling the air, her wet sheath compressed around his rod as her own severe explosion radiated outward from her core to her entire being. Her mind was turned to mush, not thinking on anything but the most blissful and forceful orgasm she had ever had, and as her inner fluids kept merging with her lover's, the teenage girl desired the feeling to just continue onward for eternity. Yet all things eventually must come to an end, and after what felt like forever for the two lovers, their orgasms died out, causing them to slump against each other, his face still on her neck and her head lying on his shoulder. They panted heavily, twitching occasionally upon feeling his jerked a bit inside her, and her vagina responded in kind by momentarily clamping around him. With her tongue partly sticking out as she panted, Tenten felt like a female dog in heat. Cammy, she managed to softly speak between breaths. I have not ever come so hard before. She gently mewed upon feeling his fingers traveling up her spine. You're not the only one, gasped Naruto. It had felt like all his energy blasted out of his body through his with that eruption. As they sat together, enjoying the touch of one another and the feel of their cooling sweat, their breathing rate gradually returned to normal, and only then did each relax to relish the afterglow. Small blissful grins graced their faces as fingers softly traced over each other's skin. Tenten, Naruto spoke after a few minutes of comfortable silence. Yeah, she replied, her right index finger ghosting down his left side. Raising his head back to look at her, prompting her to do the same, the blonde boy frowned in curiosity. Well, when I first entered you, I was expecting something. Some sort of barrier that I read all women have. Understanding dawned to the brunette weapons expert. You're referring to my hymen, she grinned gently. I broke it during my first year as a genin under Guy Sensei's intensive training. I'm glad though, or else I would have found it painful during. That's good, Naruto grinned in relief, before his frown reappeared. What about, well, I did shoot into you. I just hope. Tenten tenderly laughed, shaking her head at his apprehension. He looked kind of cute like this. Don't worry, Naruto, I'm not going to get pregnant. Knowing you, you perhaps are not aware that all active duty kunoichi, doing missions outside the village, are required to take special contraceptives to prevent pregnancy. Her lips curled into a half frown. Just in case we're captured by the enemy. Instead of appearing like a student who first learned something new, Naruto sheepish rubbed the back of head as he chuckled, like he knew what she had told him. Well, I knew about that, Tenten. I didn't know whether you had taken it. Letting out a breath through her nose, Tenten amusedly shook her head at him. Given how naive he was at times, she expected him not to know about the kunoichi birth control. Then again, it was possible Sakura told him, since they were on the same team, or he actually did learn about it on his own. This came to remind her once more that when it came to Naruto, you just couldn't predict him some of the time. Quickly hugging him as she returned her head to rest on his left shoulder, causing her lover to warmly do the same, Konoha's weapons mistress bathed in the pleasant intimacy of the moment. It certainly was tranquil. After purring a bit from the soft kisses Naruto were placing on the back of her neck, Tenten heard him ask two questions that brought her back to the situation that had started this lovemaking session with him. Are you okay now? You're not horny anymore. Now that she was thinking about it, her nose took a whiff of his scent, and surely enough, that smell was still there. Not as potent as it was before, but the traces were sufficient to make her head spin and her crotch melt anew. She softly chuckled. I'm afraid I'm not entirely satisfied yet, Naruto. The blonde Jinchuriki sighed with a small grin. Not that he didn't enjoy just he was hoping Tenten's horniness would have been resolved, especially after that fiery climax they had experienced minutes ago. Yet he was not going to give up, until she was completely gratified. Watching her raise her head to look at him, Naruto saw her sly expression. So, ready for round two, Whisker Boy? She asked seductively. He answered not with words but with action, as the whiskered young man swiftly pulled her head forward and mashed his mouth over hers. His female partner edged deeply in approval of the feel of his lips warmly molding over hers and their hot tongues slithering together. Yet just as fast as he initiated the searing kiss, Naruto ended it harshly, leaving her breathless. Does that answer your question, weapons girl? He teased with a smiling expression that told Tenten he was going to give it to her. Liking very much her lover's aggressiveness, Tenten matched his expression before giving a quick nip on his chin. Then she disengaged her body from his prior to lying down in front of him onto the soft grass, propping up on her forearms. With her smoldering brown eyes locked on his blue ones, the brunette edged her lips and raised her shapely legs in the air as she spread them. Naruto's breath hitched at the provocative picture before him. Knowing she caught him in her spell, the weapons mistress just needed to reel him in. Like what you see, lover? She asked idly. She reached down for her fingers of one hand to spread her labia apart, showing her wet, which was oozing out the combination of their juices. As you can see, I'm ready for you to me. I want you to me long and hard. Just pound me silly with that steel sword of yours and make me explode. Unable to just take her dirty talk lightly, due to how much it was turning him on, Naruto pounced on Tenten, and before she knew it, his mouth was covering hers in yet another toe-curling kiss that made her and her arms swiftly circling around his body. Yet, as before, he quickly ended the lip lock, leaving her breathless. His smoldering eyes and big grin made her shiver, especially after feeling the tip of his touching her entrance as he aligned the organ. You want it that badly, weapons girl. You got it. With that said, he slammed his hips against hers, filling her flaming sheath to the brim with solid hard man meat. Eyelids clutching closed, Tenten couldn't help but to toss her head back and let out a scream as a huge shock of intense pleasure coursed through her body from the brisk intrusion and her core fluttered welcomingly around his stick. Yet before she could get a chance to recover, the 17-year-old girl felt her lover's body fall on top of hers, molding his skin to hers, prior to his hips began to slap vigorously against hers, his rod speedily weaving in and out of her in the process. Yes. Yes. The brunette Kunoichi yelled as bolts of electricity shot through her system. She tightened her arms around her partner, while her legs wrapped around his hips ending with her feet crossed over his rump. Me. Oh. Me good. A gasp escaped her mouth as her special spot was stimulated, sending a shock up her spine. Naruto oh. Spurred on by her words, Naruto continued the assault, motivated to drive the beautiful woman underneath him to the ultimate high. Yet by doing so, he was increasing his own pleasure as well, loving the feel of her body and her liquefied womanhood. It was heavenly. With minds thinking about nothing but each other, the two teenagers drove on, and when Naruto silenced Tenten with his mouth over hers, she clutched her arms even tighter around his body with one hand on the back of his head. They ed and groaned into each other's mouths, tongues lovingly tangling together as they carried on the breakneck merging of their s. The fest between them went on for a very long time afterward, and it was something neither would ever forget. Ends. Blinking open, chocolate-colored eyes saw the ceiling and then the walls and finally the window besides the bed. At first, their owner thought this was not her room, but memories of yesterday made her realize whose bedroom this was. Stretching her lithe body under the bed sheets, Tenten allowed a yawn to escape her being, and only then did she turn to her right to view the teenage boy still asleep beside her. Propping her head on her right hand and arm, she gave a warm grin at the sight of Naruto looking so peaceful and cute as he slept, not to mention dashing with his body and hair all messed up from not only sleep but from their UAL workout as well. Reaching over, her left index finger traced one whisker mark on his left cheek, causing Naruto to giggle a bit in his sleep before turning his head away. Tenten giggled at his reaction. "You're so cute like this, Naruto," admitted the brunette. As her left fingers combed through her rumpled shoulder blade-length tresses, Konoha's weapons mistress remembered everything that had transpired yesterday. Naruto and she had spent nearly several hours in UAL bliss in the forest, and it had been quite intense, judging from her body's reaction. Yet even after the hard workout, she still had felt not totally relieved, thus after temporarily putting their clothes back on, Naruto led her back to his apartment, where they spent the remainder of the afternoon and the entire evening continuing having the hottest she had ever experienced. A giggle escaped her lips. "Well, there was a brief respite to get some food in our stomachs," she mentally said as her eyes watched Naruto sleep. "That's the first time I have ever seen anyone have 2 kitchen cabinets full of nothing but instant ramen. Least it was better than nothing though. Naruto definitely needs to have more food than just ramen." Just then the subject of her thoughts blinked his eyes open, before his mouth admitted a long yawn. Only then did blue eyes focused on the woman lying on his bed next to him. "Morning, Tenten," Naruto greeted with a grin. "Good morning to you, Naruto," she replied with equal feelings. "Sleep well." "Yeah," the blonde admitted as he stretched his arms up in the air in front of him. "That's one of best nights I have ever slept." As his arms dropped back down, his face became a bit uneasy as he eyed her. "Are you okay now? You're not still horny after everything we done yesterday, right?" Tenten softly laughed. "I'm fine now, thanks to you. I'm not horny anymore." She watched amusedly as he let go a breath of relief, and she did not blame him, for she had been so aroused that it had taken a great effort on his part to satisfy her. Speaking of Naruto's efforts, Naruto. Seeing she had gained his attention again, the weapons-loving girl continued. "I'm only guessing here, but due to how well you had satisfied me," she paused and enjoying seeing him blushed with pride. "You're not a virgin, right?" Naruto paused and thought in whether to answer her, but given how intimate they had been in the past day, he figured it was best to be honest. "Yeah, I'm not a virgin," he smiled knowingly. "I lost it a year ago during my training trip with Ero Sennin." A frown formed on the brunette's face. "You lost your virginity to a prostitute." Tenten had heard of Jiraiya's perverted tendencies from most of the older kunoichi, especially Tsunade-sama. It was hard to believe one of the legendary Sannin was a pervert, but once she was told the man was the author of the Ika Ika series of books, it was much easier to believe it. "What?" Naruto blinked, before he softly laughed and shook his head. No, I did not lose it to a prostitute." "I'm guessing you believe that it was due to Ero Sennin, right?" A nod from Tenten told him he was correct. "Well, I lost it to Koyuki Hime of Spring Country." Feminine brown eyes went wide. "Kazuhana Koyuki, daimyo of Spring Country, formerly Snow Country." Naruto chuckled and nodded, but it was still hard to believe he managed to lose his virginity to the one of the most beautiful rulers in the world, not to mention a movie screen starlet. How? So the blonde Jinchuriki told the tale of his visit to Spring Country, where Jiraiya attended the premiere of his Ika Ika movie, starring Koyuki. While the super perv was busy with the premiere, Koyuki had invited Naruto to a private dinner in her palace. She had wanted to thank her young savior for everything he had done during Team 7's mission a year or so back when they had saved her life and rescued her kingdom. Thus that night, not only did Naruto had a wonderful dinner, he was D by the gorgeous older woman, who made the first bold move on him. Naruto had quite an education for 3 nights and 2 days, and the boy made certain his Sanin teacher did not hear a word of it. After he finished his story, Team Guy's weapons expert shook her head while smiling. If that story ever get out, you'll be envied by all the guys in the village, if not the world, Naruto. Naruto shrugged, grinning at the truth she told. Well, Yuki-chan and I made a promise not to tell anyone, and her servants admire her so much that they wouldn't dare say a word either. I'm not going to have my first time end up in Ero Sennin's books. I don't blame you, agreed Tenten, for she too would not like the idea of her life being written in a book and being read by so many people throughout the world. It would be so embarrassing. What about you? Asked a curious Naruto. You said yesterday you lost your hymen during extensive training, but your actions did not look like you were a virgin. Lying back down as she grinned sheepishly with slight pinking cheeks, Tenten answered his question. Even though she didn't have to answer him, she thought it was a fair exchange for him telling her his story. Well, Neji and I had a couple of times in the past year. Oh, said Naruto solemnly, feeling guilty. I guess I ruined your relationship with him, if you two love each other. Tenten blinked in confusion at the younger boy, until she chuckled in understanding. We're not in that kind of relationship, Naruto. Seeing his bewilderment, she clarified. We're still friends, no more than that. We have a friends with benefits type of relationship. Friends with benefits? Asked a still confused blonde shinobi. The weapons-loving girl half frowned and half smirked at her bedmate's lack of knowledge. Yes, friends with benefits. Are you and Koyuki boyfriend and girlfriend after you had with her? Well, no, he replied. I care for her as a friend, and I admit I was a fan of her movies. After our time together, even she said she just wanted to stay friends with me, given she and I lived so far apart from each other. Precisely, Tenten grinned knowingly. Just because a man and a woman does not mean they're in love with each other. It depends on the individual. Some people see as making love, thus they will not ever have casual without having deeper feelings for their partners. Others can easily have one-night stands due to seeing as physical pleasure with no deeper feelings involved. Friends with benefits is precisely what it entitles, friends who can have for pleasure without having deeper feelings for one another. Oh, Naruto blinked now in comprehension, before a small smile spread across his face. Does this mean we're friends with benefits? Tenten sighed with a tiny grin. I don't know whether this is just a one-time deal, Naruto. I confess that you're a great lover, and I trust you will not tell anyone else. After seeing him nod that told her he would do as she said, the brunette sighed again in relief. You're definitely a friend, but whether we've become friends with benefits, I'm not sure. That's okay, Tenten, replied Naruto with a sincere, friendly grin. I'm just glad to be there to help a friend in need. I will not ever let down a friend who needs help. Matching his expression, the 17-year-old Kunoichi was grateful for his unselfishness and friendship. Thank you, Naruto, she said meaningfully. His grin went wide in that bashful expression of his as he chuckled a bit. After a few minutes of warm silence between them as they lay there, Tenten frowned before she sat up to face her blonde lover. She was not shameful of him seeing her ness, especially not after what they'd done intimately together. Naruto, can you tell me what in Kami you did to drive me you ally insane yesterday? You had a strong scent, and now that I think about it, you must have placed some powerful pheromones on your body to get me to that state. Her arms crossed over her chest to show her seriousness. Start explaining. Naruto sighed as he frowned. He knew pretty soon or later she would bring up the subject. It's pretty much Ero Sennin's fault, Tenten, he began prior to getting out of bed to walk to the dresser to pick up something and then coming back to present the item to his female friend. Getting her slight blush under control after seeing his toned unclad form, Tenten took the item and stared at it puzzlingly. Sage deodorant. Yeah, I found that here the day we came back from Suna. Ero Sennin left me a note, telling me this deodorant was from him. Knowing him, I had a nagging feeling he was up to something, but I didn't listen to my guts. I used it for the first time yesterday. Realization came to Tenten. So this was what I smelled from you? She asked, looking from the deodorant up into unwavering blue orbs, whose owner nodded once in earnest. Did you meet any other women before me? No, I didn't, the blonde answered. I slept in late yesterday, and when I went to Ichiraku's for lunch, Tsukiji-san and another guy were there but not Ayame Nichan. You were the first girl I ran across yesterday. Team Guy's female member looked back down at the canned product with narrowed eyes. So this is the culprit. Knowing your teacher, Naruto, I'm not surprised. Me either, admitted Naruto. I'm just glad I didn't run into Ayame Nichan yesterday or any other girl. Naruto was surprised, when Tenten giggled before looking at him teasingly. You're right. You might have ended up with horde of women wanting a piece of you. The mental image of such a scenario made the blonde shinobi quivered in fear. That's not funny, he softly said, his mind remembering how Sasuke's fangirls were like. Giggling again at his fearful expression, Tenten looked back down at the deodorant in her hand before becoming serious once more. Despite seeing the humorous side of him being mobbed by crowd of women, Naruto was right that truthfully it was not really a laughing matter. She was thankful Naruto was not the type to take advantage of such a female-controlling substance, but it did not mean other men might. Without thinking about it, the brunette Kunoichi placed her hand over the cap. Seeing what she about to do, Naruto's eyes went wide as he swiftly slapped his hand over hers, startling her in the process but preventing her from removing the cap. What are you doing? Naruto nearly shouted. Do you want to end up being horny crazy again? Realizing her mistake, Tenten rubbed the back of her head with her left hand as she chuckled sheepishly. Oops, I was not thinking there for a moment. Sorry. She adorably stuck out her tongue as she chuckled again. Naruto let go a breath in relief prior to taking the deodorant from her. I'm placing this away. When Ero Sennin comes back, I'm going to have word with him. Knowing him, he was thinking I would get gang raped by women in order to get a story for his perverted books. Tenten nodded in total agreement. Turning slightly to put the deodorant away, Naruto stepped on his discarded boxers, and the smooth material of the underwear caused him to slip, not enough to make him fall but enough for him to let go of the deodorant. Blue and brown eyes watched in horror as the can fall to the floor, making them see it as if it was in slow motion upon what it did next. The plastic top cap hit the wooden floor, acting like a spring to bounce the can up again while at the same time dislodge the cap. The can did a 360-degree loop in flight before landing, with the nozzle facing down, onto the floor again. The impact caused the nozzle to release a short spray of deodorant just before the recoil released it. The can finally rolled on the floor to a rest. The whole event took less than a second. Looking down at the can, Naruto laughed a bit nervously. It only released a bit of it. Not as much as I used yesterday though. It shouldn't cause any affect. Right, Tenten? He asked as he looked at the older girl. His grin vanished upon seeing her head down with her hair hiding her face as her body trembled slightly. Oh, Kami, please, Naruto said in worry, before he grabbed his hair and raised his voice. You cannot possibly be infected by that. Tenten very softly laughed, and when she raised her head, the whisker-faced boy saw her hungry face, telling him she was indeed infected. Sorry, Naruto. I'm going to be needing your help again. Closing his eyes, Naruto sighed. I'm going to kill Ero Sennin for this. Wait in line, Tenten admitted a bit darkly, thinking of various ways she was going to maim the legendary Toad Sannin. Yet her expression changed to a sly one upon seeing mesmerizing blue orbs open to gaze at her. She ed her lips, feeling the heat aroused her highly on the thoughts of what she was about to do next. In the meantime, you're going to pound me silly again, Whisker Boy. Sighing again but this time out of humor, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki knew he had no choice. I guess we're not going to be leaving the apartment today either, weapons girl. Since she had mentioned the nickname she gave him yesterday while they had been screwing each other silly in the forest, he might as well call her by her nickname he had bestowed on her. Nope, agreed the weapons mistress, before she quickly grabbed her lover and pulled him down onto the bed on top of her. She hungrily mashed her mouth onto his, and when he returned the fierce kiss, forcing his tongue past her lips to duel with hers, the brunette eyed approvingly at his actions. For most of the day, Naruto did his best to satisfy the UAL-infected Tenten and vice versa. Like yesterday, they helped each other achieve the ultimate peak of pleasure as best as possible, and each found it fun and very stimulating in doing so. Luckily for Naruto, the effects of the deodorant were not as severe this time around, or else he would have resorted to using chakra to keep up with the horny female in his arms. Despite his stamina, there was a limit to how many times he could shoot a load, and for a guy, it was draining to not having time between reloads, Jinchuriki or no Jinchuriki. Human nature. Ever since the dawn of civilization, the human race has been thinking about its own existence, what it meant to be human with emotions and intelligence wrapped up in a biological package with a brain. Yet despite for all its wisdom, people today were still puzzled over their own species, given the complexities of the vast diversity of human beings around the world. It was enough to give even the top psychologists headaches. Yet for one Haruno Sakura, Chunin Kunoichi, medic, and apprentice of Konoha's Godime Hokage, she was trying to figure out the riddle that was her teammate, Uzumaki Naruto. Oh, not that he had been easy to read, given the blonde had always been unpredictable, ever since she knew of him back during their academy years. This was nothing new. It was just the odd occurrence of seeing Tenten with Naruto, as the two had walked down the outside staircase of his apartment building several days ago on the morning Team Kakashi were to meet their new captain and third teammate. For the Pinkett, she remembered walking down the street toward the apartment building's street entrance when the two came down the stairs. Green eyes blinked upon seeing the weapons-loving Kunoichi besides her teammate. Naruto. Tenten, she blurted out, alerting the two to her presence, just when they reached the stairs, bottom. Both were startled at first, but they soon relaxed as Naruto smiled and rubbed the back of his head. Morning, Sakura-chan. Good morning, Sakura, Tenten greeted with a small grin at the same time Naruto lowered his hand. Good morning, Sakura returned the greeting before eyeing her fellow Kunoichi. Why are you here, Tenten? I don't recall you ever been to Naruto's apartment before. Before the brunette could answer, the blonde shinobi spoke out. Tenten and I had been helping each other train in the past 2 days, Sakura-chan. She stopped by this morning to discuss continuing our training after I returned from the mission regarding Sasori's spy. Sakura raised her eyebrows at this. Really? She focused back on the older girl. You're helping Naruto train. Since when? Since 2 days ago, Tenten replied with a small grin. Naruto had happened to come across me training, and we've been helping each other ever since. Believe me, he makes a better practicing partner for my weapons training. She patted her large scroll strapped on her back, than either Lee or Neji. I don't have to worry about killing Naruto, not with him producing so many Kage Bunshin for me to target. And what do you help him with? Tactics. Tenten smirked a bit. With his Kage Bunshin, he's literally in one-man army. Her smirk went wider as her brown eyes targeted her male colleague. It's just he's not that well versed in getting them to work in unison some of the time. He just throws his clones out without thinking. Sakura giggled at this. Yeah, that's for sure. Tenten, Sakura-chan, whined Naruto, causing both girls to giggle this time. Letting out a defeated breath, knowing he just could not win against their teasing, Naruto eyed his teammate. What are you doing here, Sakura-chan? What else? The pink-haired girl replied with hands on her hips. I'm here to make certain you are ready to meet our new captain and team member. Well, I'm ready, Naruto responded, before he thumbed to the backpack on his back. As you can see, I'm packed and ready to go on the mission. Sakura smiled in satisfaction. Good. If there was one thing she was certain about, it was that Naruto always was ready to do his missions. He may not like doing D ranks, but he was always ready to do even them. This time was no exception. Tenten smiled at the pair. Speaking of teams, I better get going to meet mine. Her grin went a bit wider as she eyed the blonde. I'll talk to you when you come back. Naruto smiled back at the brunette. Sure thing, Tenten. Good. The weapons mistress chirped. Good luck on your mission, she said to both before walking past Sakura and heading away from the two Team 7 members. After a moment of watching Tenten strolled away, Naruto gestured to his teammate to follow him. Come on, Sakura-chan. Let's get going. The pinkett complied, trailing her friend toward the place to meet their two new team members. Yet as they walked along, Sakura couldn't help but to think about Tenten. Nothing was amiss about the older girl. Her clothes were clean, hair orderly pinned up in their twin buns. Weapons scroll attached to her back. However, when Team Guy's Kunoichi walked past her, Sakura picked up the scents of body wash and shampoo, and having coming to know the weapons-loving girl in the past nearly 3 years, Sakura knew which hair and soap products Tenten used. What she smelled was not Tenten's familiar hygiene stuff, for they smelled of the familiar shampoo and soap of Naruto's. Sakura inwardly frowned, as she and her team strolled toward the Hokage Tower to report to Tsunade-sama the results of the mission. She and Naruto were disappointed from meeting Sasuke, not to mention the overall mission was a failure. Yet, they'd managed to destroy one of Orochimaru's bases and made a new friend in Sai, who Naruto brought onto their side with his usual gift, in making people become his friend. It was a knack that the blonde had that certainly came in handy at times. As she kept a giggle in check after Sai once more made an unintentional joke regarding Naruto's, which was becoming a very sore and embarrassing subject for the blonde to hear in public, the pink-haired Kunoichi wondered about what was going on between Naruto and Tenten. It was kind of odd for the older girl to be at Naruto's apartment early in the morning to discuss training, not to mention the smell of Naruto's shampoo and body soap coming from the brunette. What was going on with those two? Nearly yelping upon feeling a hand on her shoulder, Jade eyes turned to look up into the concerned face of Team Kakashi's current leader, Yamato. With Kakashi-sensei bedridden from the mission to rescue Gaara, Yamato was picked by the fifth to lead the mission to meet Sasori's spy, which turned out to be Kabuto. Are you okay, Sakura? You seem to be worried. Oh, I'm okay, grinned Sakura reassuringly up at her captain, even though she did not feel like it. Just tired from the mission. Yamato nodded, before facing forward again with Naruto and Sai in front. After the briefing, it's best you have that arm check out. You don't want any side effects from the Kyuubi's chakra affecting you. Hi, agreed the pinkett as her right hand reached up to the scar on her left arm. Naruto had gone into an uncontrolled rage and formed a four-tailed fox cloak, thus with his mind under control of the Kyuubi, he was not able to distinguish between friend and foe. Sakura paid the price in trying to stop Naruto, when he slashed her arm with one of his tails. It was an experience she would not ever forget. Thank Kami, Yamato Taiko was there to stop Naruto and bring him back to normal. As they continued the trek toward the Hokage Tower, Yamato was having his own thought conference, and it was about Sakura. It was obvious to him the girl lied to him. Something was troubling the teenage girl, and it was not about the mission. Yet given how she eyed her blonde teammate, the Junin knew it had something to do with Naruto. Dismissing the subject, the elite shinobi coughed it up to the typical stages teenagers go through. To get involved in the messy and highly emotional drama of adolescence was just asking for trouble, especially given he was not even a parent. Yamato only hoped that any personal problems Sakura and Naruto were experiencing did not affect their professional lives. Tenten sighed happily. Even though she loved doing missions, especially the kinds that enabled her to leave the village and visit many other places, she couldn't dispute the age-old wisdom of a well-known quote when it came to where her heart lay: there's no place like home. It was a nice change of pace to do a simple C rank, after that A rank mission rescuing Gaara. Yet even after doing a C rank, the female weapons expert just wanted to go home and take a long, relaxing soak in her bathtub. It was soothing to even think of the warm waters surrounding her body, thus why now, after she and her team had just strolled through Konoha's front gate, she had the urge to run to her apartment, take off her clothes, and dive into her tub. "I definitely going to take a very long soak this time around," mentally chirped Tenten, thinking of adding her favorite bath oil to the water to make it feel really appeasing. "I still find it hard to believe you and Naruto are training together." Letting out a breath, this time in disbelief, Tenten turned her head to face the person who had spoken, her teammate, Neji Hyuga. "Why is it so hard to accept that, Neji? I told you, Lee, and Guy-sensei many times already the whole story. Naruto's Kage Bunshin are ideal for target practice, not to mention we can learn new things from one another. I can teach him about weapons, maybe a kenjutsu style, and he in turn can teach me about ninjutsu, which I can add to my arsenal. After several years of training with just you, Lee, and Guy-sensei, maybe it's time to train with others to expand my skills and knowledge." "Tenten is right, Neji," exclaimed Guy with an approving smile. "There is nothing wrong with expanding your knowledge and skills under hard work to become stronger." Lee piped in. "Naruto-kun is a genius of hard work just like Guy-sensei and I. Tenten will definitely benefit from training with him." The taijutsu master in training raised a fist. "Knowing Naruto-kun, he has grown stronger in the past 2 years under Jiraiya-sama. I must challenge him to a fight." "Yes, Lee," Guy approved. "We have no doubt Naruto's fires of youth have grown stronger. Just like you." With his own fires burning bright, the young Chunin embraced his master. "Guy-sensei, Lee. Guy-sensei, Lee." As people around Team Guy stared at the two hugging green beasts like they were crazy, Neji and Tenten's sweat dropped. "Can they ever one day be normal?" the bun-haired Kunoichi asked rhetorically. The Hyuga genius shook his head slightly. "You know as well as I that will not ever happen." Suddenly, Tenten perked up upon spotting a familiar blonde standing with a known pink-haired girl and an unknown black-haired boy. All three were wearing civilian clothes. "Hey, look, there's Naruto." She began strolling toward the three with a wave of her hand. "Hey, Naruto." The boy in question turned and grinned upon seeing who was approaching. "Hi there, Tenten." Naruto even waved to the three men just behind her. "Neji. Bushy brows. Bushy brows sensei." "Hi there." Sakura grinned at Team Guy. Tenten returned the greetings, as well as the other members of her team. Afterward, they stared at the strange black-haired boy, and only then did the pink-haired realize her manners and began the introductions. "Oh, everyone, this is Sai. Team Kakashi's new team member. Sai, this is Team Guy, Tenten, Neji, Rock Lee, and their sensei, Maida Guy." "Hello," Sai said with a smile. After Tenten and her male teammates once again said their greetings, the Kunoichi focused on the lone blonde boy. "So how was your mission?" Her grin dropped upon seeing Naruto and Sakura frowned. "Was it bad?" Naruto sighed. "Yeah, we failed." Sakura shook her head. Tsunade Shisho said it was not a total failure. "We learned a lot, even if we didn't manage to bring Sasuke-kun back." Team Guy was shocked. "You met the Uchiha." Neji spoke for his team. This was likely the first time anyone had seen Uchiha Sasuke, since he defected from Konoha years ago. "What happened?" Guy asked, his face serious. San's youngest apprentice shook her head. "How about we wait until we tell Kakashi-sensei?" She gestured to Naruto and Sai. "We're going over to the hospital to meet him. He'll be released in the next day or two." Guy nodded in agreement to wait. "Then let us go. I too want to hear about your mission. Any information regarding Uchiha Sasuke will be very important." With that said, both teams began their journey toward the hospital. As they walked along, with Naruto situated between Sakura and Tenten, Konoha's weapons mistress noticed the title of the book Sai was reading as he strolled on Sakura's other side. "How to Socialize for Dummies." "Why are you reading that?" Naruto replied. "Sai is socially." He frowned as he racked his brain for the word. "He's socially inept." Sakura provided. Sai's socially inept. The blonde snapped his fingers and pointed to his female teammate with a grateful grin. That's right. Thanks, Sakura-chan. Blue eyes turned back to the brunette Kunoichi to his left. Sai is socially inept. After uttering a brief giggle on Naruto's lack of vocabulary in not knowing that word, Tenten returned to raven-haired boy in question. So you're not very sociable, Sai? Sai produced his grin. I am learning. This book is very helpful. It stated that between close friends, one could give nicknames to one another. Tenten nodded at that. Not everyone give nicknames to their close friends. I do know Naruto calls Lee, bushy brows, and Lee does not mind. Sakura entered the discussion, her eyes locked on Tenten's. Before you arrived, Naruto and I told Sai that sometimes nicknames are created out of a person's physical traits. Naruto's nickname for Lee is a great example of that. Her lips spread into an impish smirk. You should hear what Sai calls Naruto. Sakura-chan. Naruto cried out scandalously. Judging from the blonde's reaction, Tenten figured the nickname have to be very embarrassing. What does he call him? Before Naruto could say a word, Sai spoke out with a grin. I call him, Les. The four members of Team Guy raised their eyebrows at this. Why do you call him that? Asked a slightly amused Tenten, especially upon seeing Sakura trying to hold her laughter in. Sai didn't hesitate. Because his is. Sai. Naruto interrupted. As small. Tenten finished, guessing the obvious answer. Tenten. The blonde shinobi cried out in shock, causing Sakura to laugh, Tenten to giggle behind a hand over her mouth, and Neji to smirk. A baffled Guy and Lee just looked on with blinking eyes. Yet for the 17-year-old female weapons expert, she was also laughing at the fact that she personally knew Naruto's well. After all, having experienced it firsthand, she could easily tell Naruto was not small. She wondered how Sai came to such a conclusion, unless the boy had seen Naruto's organ in its deflated stage. With his cheeks very red, Naruto scowled at the grinning, art-drawing shinobi before turning to face Team Guy on his left. I know Sai was about to give a nickname to Sakura-chan before you guys arrived. Oh, Tenten said as she lowered her hand, while Sakura immediately stopped laughing to focus on Sai. Once more, the black-haired boy did not hesitate. I was thinking of calling her ugly. Everyone was quite astonished, while Sakura softly laughed, making the others wonder why she was not upset. Naruto and Team Guy changed their minds, when the Pinkett, the next moment out of rage, grabbed Sai and slapped his face several times quite severely prior to punching him through a wooden fence. Every person on the street stopped to observe the carnage with fear for the enraged Kunoichi. As Sai's raised hand twitched in pain while Sakura continued to fume at him, Naruto blinked a few times before turning his head behind him to face Tenten, who had wrapped her arms around him with hands on his shoulders to prevent him from moving to intercept Sakura. Why did you stop me, Tenten? The brunette girl gave a, are you crazy? Expression at him. I know you're noble and all, Naruto, but surely even you wouldn't be that stupid to stand between Sakura and anyone she wants to punch out of rage. You would have ended up like him, she finished with a finger pointing at the still down Sai. Looking at his semi-unconscious teammate, Naruto nodded in understanding. Good point. He knew Sai was so new in socializing that it was not really his fault for not understanding what names were appropriate. Yet Naruto kept forgetting Sakura-chan has become freakishly super strong. Thank Kami, Tenten was there to prevent him from experiencing that monster strength again, thus he made a promise to himself to make certain he would not stand between Sakura and her target, ever again. After feeling Tenten's arms release him, the blonde Jinchuriki continued the trek toward the hospital with Tenten and her team following suit. Only then did Sakura notice everyone was leaving, thus she sped up a bit to catch up to walk on Naruto's right side again. Naruto waved a hand over his head, still facing forward as he walked on. We'll see you at the hospital, Sai, he called out to the boy behind him. As onlookers started to move away as well, Sai's raised hand continued to twitch in pain. Even though he showed a calm exterior, Kakashi couldn't help but be laughing inside. After a few minutes of receiving visitors in the form of his two students and Team Guy, Team Kakashi's newest member strolled on in, and after he had introduced himself, the copy nin had noticed the strange bruise on the young man's face. When he had whispered to Sakura if there was a problem, she had laughed and said there weren't any problems. Right, sure. If the facial expressions on Naruto, Tenten, and somewhat on Neji and Lee have anything to say, Sakura was the one who gave that huge bruise on Sai's face. Seems our newest member is already experiencing Sakura's temperament firsthand, Kakashi mentally laughed. Before the elite Junin could say anything, the room's shoji door slid open, causing everyone to see who was it. Standing in the threshold was Sarutobi Asuma, and his three students, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji. Hi there, Kakashi, greeted the third Hokage's son. I brought a gift. He held up a basket of apples. Asuma-sensei, chided his blonde kunoichi student. Do you ever knock before entering? As Team Asuma, aka Team 10, entered the room, Shikamaru gave his usual lazy greeting, while Choji, munching on a bag of chips, just waved to everyone. Both however stopped upon seeing Sai as they glared at the boy. What are you doing here? The Nara heir asked, causing everyone, except Naruto, to blink in confusion to what the ponytailed boy was referring. However, after a few minutes of Sai explaining things, the two teenage boys of Team 10 relaxed, as did everyone else. So you were just testing Naruto? Shikamaru asked as he stood next to Choji, who sat down on a small, wheeled stool. As long as that is the case, I'm okay with you, the big Akamichi claimed with a grin, before he continued with his snacking. Standing by Naruto's right side as they stood to the right side of Kakashi's bed, Tenten raised an eyebrow at the blonde. Did he really test you like that? Yeah, he did, admitted Naruto. It was the day we had gotten back from Suna. After I left the hospital, I ran into Shikamaru and Choji, and that was when Sai attacked, as he stated. At the time, I did not know I was being tested. Turning from Naruto to face the grinning Sai, who stood in front of the bed, the teenage weapons expert gave an expression that was half frown and half smirk. I admit that was not exactly ideal to test someone like that, even though it does have some merits. I'll say, Ino grinned slyly at Sai as she stood next to Sakura on the opposite side of Naruto and Tenten. The Yamanaka leaned to whisper to Sakura, but it was barely loud enough for Tenten to hear as well. He's cute. He reminds me of Sasuke-kun. Sakura whispered back seriously. He may look like Sasuke-kun, but Sai is clueless when it comes to being social. He's nothing like him. Tenten frowned as she mentally shook her head. It was quite obvious Sai was so naive when it came to social interactions. She couldn't believe Ino could make comparisons to the Uchiha, who, as far as she was concerned, was a traitor and stuck-up bastard. For the weapons mistress, she just couldn't see what was so attractive regarding Sasuke. At least Naruto, despite his own childlike personality, was a far better person to socialize than Sasuke ever was. A throat clearing made everyone turn to Guy, who lowered his hand. Kakashi, your students have had an interesting mission. One where they met with an ex-student of yours. Kakashi sighed. Yamato has informed me. He turned to Sakura. You and Naruto met Sasuke again. Team 10's eyes went wide at this news. Sasuke-kun, Ino asked as she trained her sight on her best friend. You met Sasuke-kun again. The pinkett nodded with sad eyes. Yeah, we did. It's just he has become even more powerful and stronger, and the way he acted, he's become more cold and distant. With this said, Sakura began telling the tale of the entire mission, from meeting Kabuto to the very end where Sasuke left with Orochimaru and Kabuto. The only thing she excluded was Naruto's transformation into the four-tailed fox cloak, given she was told by Kakashi regarding the third Hokage's law. By the time Sakura was finished with the story, there were mixed reactions among the group. Ino felt like crying, while Tenten and most of the guys were frowning. Only the three adult Junin were showing neutrality with displaying any emotions. I just can't believe it, Ino nearly whispered. Has Sasuke-kun fallen so deep? Sakura sighed. I find it hard to believe it too. Yet I was there. She gestured toward Sai. If it weren't for Sai, Sasuke-kun could have killed Naruto. Green eyes focused on the concerned blue ones of Naruto's. I can't believe you just stood there and allowed him to nearly kill you, Naruto. This time it was Naruto's turn to sigh. Well, I wasn't expecting him to do it, Sakura-chan. I let my guard down. Tenten crossed her arms in disbelief. You weren't expecting him to kill you, she said, gaining everyone's attention. All due respect, Naruto, but everyone in the village now knows of the battle between you and Sasuke at the Valley of the End more than 2 years ago. He plunged a Chidori through your body. Naruto winced at the memories, raising his left hand to cover the area on his right shoulder where Sasuke's fist had once pierced through him. He definitely wanted to kill you. Not to mention the other members of the retrieval team nearly died as well. She eyed each of the other boys, who were part of that mission of long ago. Shikamaru closed his eyes and sighed. Choji lost his appetite as he remembered nearly dying. Lee winced from what he remembered of his battle, and Neji closed his eyes, understanding well what his female teammate was conveying. Only then did Tenten return to focus on Naruto. How can you possibly think Sasuke would not kill you? I know, burst Naruto as he held up a hand to forestall Tenten before lowering it and taking a calming breath. I made a mistake, but you just do not know Sasuke as Sakura-chan and I do. I believe he still is good, I just need to reach him. No one knows how it feels to lose an entire family like he did. Dropping her frown, Tenten shook her head. The entire village has given him sympathy for his loss, Naruto. Yet losing his entire clan is no excuse for betraying the village. Do you really think he can be redeemed? A reassuring and confident smile spread across the blonde's face. I know he can be redeemed. As I said, I just need to get through to him, and I will. He finished with a raised fist. The brunette female of Team Guy couldn't help but to grin a bit upon seeing and feeling Naruto's confidence. Just what was it about him that gave everyone a strong sense of spirit in oneself as well as wanting to believe in Naruto? She remembered how Naruto had lifted the spirits of everyone during the first part of the Chunin exams that Ibiki had no choice but to pass everyone. Even now, as she gazed at the others in the room, Naruto's self-confidence has lifted everyone up. Even Sakura and Ino were grinning a bit. It seemed Naruto once again showed that you just couldn't keep a good man down. Turning from Tenten to his bedded Junin sensei, Naruto spoke what was on his mind. Sasuke has become strong, Kakashi sensei. I need to get stronger, and there's not much time left before Orochimaru will claim his body. True, Kakashi said before he returned to reading his Ika Ika book in his hand. Yet for the type of training you needed to get stronger, it will require years to do so. Years. Naruto nearly shouted out in disappointed. We don't have years, Kakashi-sensei. The copy Ninai smiled as he raised his head out of his book. Do you think I was lying on this bed doing nothing, Naruto? His face became normal again. There's a training method that will shorten the time required. It's a method that will suit you. He paused for a moment. Matter of fact, it's a method that's only suited for you, Naruto. Tenten raised an eyebrow. Oh, what training method is that? She asked, speaking for all in the room. Kakashi eyed his book again. He'll find out tomorrow. After all, I can't start his training while I'm in the hospital. Naruto and Sakura face faulted, while everyone else, except Asuma and Guy, sweat dropped. As Naruto and Sakura recovered and glared at the silver-haired man with ticking left eyes, Tenten let out a breath and shook her head. It's not like it will harm anyone to tell what is the method, Baka. A throat-clearing snapped everyone back to reality to focus on Guy, who was grinning widely. Speaking of training, my youthful rival, your student and my student, he gestured with a hand toward Naruto and Tenten, had a training idea of their own. Oh. blinked Kakashi prior to raising an eyebrow at the pair in question. Tenten didn't hesitate in replying. Naruto and I had decided to help train each other, Kakashi-sensei. This prompted the silver-haired Junin to raise both eyebrows in surprise, and seeing that expression, the bun-haired Kunoichi elaborated. The day after we returned from Suna, Naruto ran into me training, and after we sparred, we realized we can help each other. I can teach him, say, Kenjutsu, while he can help me with ninjutsu. Her lips curled into a smirk, as she gazed at the blonde next to her. Besides, with Naruto's Kage Bunshin, I don't have to worry about holding back with the way I keep hitting my targets. Kakashi smiled amusedly in understanding, while Sakura smirked in knowledge of what Tenten had in mind for her teammate's signature jutsu. Raising a fist to his chest, Lee nearly whined to his female teammate. But, Tenten, I always had been there to provide you target practice. The weapons mistress gave a reassuring yet apologetic grin. I know, Lee, but with my accuracy better than it was 4 years ago, I'm hitting you far often now. Even with blunt kunai and shuriken, you'll end up being hurt. With Naruto's Kage Bunshin, I can kill, she quoted with her fingers, them without worrying about hurting the real person. Lee sighed in understanding, while Neji and Guy nodded to the sound reasoning. Kakashi, however, was mentally frowning. Does this mean Naruto doesn't know about the side effects of the Kage Bunshin? He mentally sighed upon answering his own question. Knowing him, I'll not be surprised tomorrow if he doesn't know. Yet copycat Kakashi nodded to the brunette female ninja as she focused back on him. That's not a bad idea. Matter of fact, what I'm going to teach Naruto will benefit you as well, Tenten. He turned his head to eye his own Kunoichi student. You too, Sakura. You both can join Naruto tomorrow as I begin his training. The pinkett simply nodded in acknowledgement. Wow, Ino said as her eyes locked on those of her best friends. Maybe you can allow me to join. Asuma chuckled while shaking his head. Guessing what Kakashi have in mind, I don't think you should join them, Ino. You're busy as it is with the training your father is giving you in learning your clan's techniques. He placed down the basket of apples on the night table besides the bed. You'll have your chance to learn after you finish your clan training. Choji and I are the same, Shikamaru spoke up. We have no time to join any cross-training with other teams. The big Akamichi nodded in affirmative without stopping his snacking. Neji was the one who talked next. I too am learning much from my clan. I do not require any cross-training. Tenten frowned a bit on this, but quickly brushed it aside. It was not like she needed him to be there for her anyway. Lee, however, was crying. Oh, if only I have more chakra to use. I too wish to join in this training. Placing a hand on his favorite student's shoulder, Guy gave his best, youthful, grin. Do not be concerned, Lee. You've proven yourself time and time again that you are a great shinobi like me. You'll become a taijutsu master and show the world the power of your youth. Perking up from his slump, Lee turned to face his teacher. You are right, Guy-sensei. He raised a fist. I am going to continue training, until I am great as you. That's the spirit, my youthful student. Guy-sensei, exclaimed Lee as he embraced his teacher, who returned the hug. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. Oh, give me break, murmured Ino, sweat dropping along with everyone else at the manly hugging scene. After the two green beasts parted a moment later, much to everyone's relief, Kakashi smiled at Sai. You're welcome to join us, Sai. Sai simply grinned. Thank you, but no, Kakashi-san. I feel sufficient in my skills to not require any training for the time being. Kakashi shrugged. Suit yourself, he said prior to casting a glance at Sakura, Naruto, and Tenten. Well, it'll be just you three. The two Chunin Kunoichi and one Genin shinobi nodded in understanding. Clearing his throat to gain everyone's attention, Asuma smiled at the younger generation of Konoha guardians. Well, now that's settled, I need to speak to Kakashi and Guy alone for a few moments now. How about you all head over to the barbecue place? I'll be coming by later, for I'll be treating. All right, shouted Choji excitedly. After all, where it came to his most favorite restaurant, he just couldn't get enough of it, especially when someone else was paying the bill for dinner. As Ino approved of the dinner notion while dreamily gazing at Sai, much to Sakura's disapproval that her blonde friend had not heed her warning, Neji shook his head. I must decline. I have some clan business to attend, not to mention needing to rest after a long mission. Tenten grinned apologetically at Naruto and the others. I too want to get home and rest, thus I'll pass. As brown eyes returned to gaze into the blue ones of the whiskered boy beside her, she saw he was somewhat disappointed, but his grin and nod told her he understood. She was glad, given as much as she wanted to socialize with her friends, the brunette so much desired to get home and relax in that bathtub waiting for her. Lee, however, was quite energetic. Yosh, I will be happy to attend dinner with my friends. I'll even pay for Sakura-san's share. Feeling embarrassed, Sakura softly laughed as she waved away the taijutsu specialist's kind offer. You don't have to pay for my share, Lee. Asuma-sensei said he will pay, so don't be concerned about it. I do not mind, Sakura-san, Lee said. After all, it will be not youthful of me if I didn't. With that, he gave a thumbs up with a smile that produced a ping, as his teeth gleamed for a moment. Sakura sighed with closed eyes. Her ears picked up her best female friend's snickering, knowing the Yamanka found it was quite amusing that after nearly 3 years, Lee still was adamant in his pursuit of winning her affections. After shaking his head at Lee's offer, despite Sakura giving a hint that she was not interested, Shikamaru headed toward the exit. I too will decline. My dad wants me to be home to help him collect deer antlers to make medicine. It's a troublesome process, but it needs to be done. With that said, he slid open the door and stepped out of the room. As the others followed him, Tenten thought of something. Speaking of dinner parties, I'm surprised we have not given Naruto a welcome home party. That's right, Ino turned to face the brunette, her voice sounding she liked the idea. We should have one for you, Naruto, she grinned. You can tell us stories of your adventures, and we can tell you what had happened in Konoha while you were away. Yeah, agreed Choji. We will plenty of food and drinks for everyone. His mouth drooled on the prospect of a huge buffet. Rubbing the back of his head, Naruto chuckled. You guys do not have to do that for me. Being home and seeing you all again are enough of a warm welcome for me. The platinum-haired Kunoichi of Team 10 waved away the notion. Nonsense. It'll just be a nice small party where we can exchange stories and everyone gets to know everything all at once. This way you do not have to repeatedly tell your stories over and over again. That's not a bad idea. Sakura nodded in agreement prior to Choji and Ino leaving the room with Sai following. Tenten softly chuckled. Do you know, Sakura, that Naruto had visited Spring Country during his trip? As Neji and Lee crossed the exit's threshold, Tsunade's youngest apprentice raised her eyebrows at the brown-haired Kunoichi before eyeing her blonde teammate. I certainly didn't know. How is Koyuki, Naruto? After Sakura, Tenten, and Naruto exited the room, the blonde answered the question with a warm grin. She's doing fine, Sakura-chan. She's very happy and doing a great job as daimyo. It was too bad you were not there, for she wouldn't have minded seeing you too. Sakura sighed warmly at the memories of the beautiful ruler of Spring Country, and as Naruto began closing the door, the 3 Junin men in the room heard the pink-haired medic's words before the door was fully shut. I certainly wouldn't have mind seeing her again. That was one mission I will not ever forget. Kakashi smiled. I will not ever forget that mission either. Naruto certainly won the day on that one. Asuma chuckled, knowing there would always be memorable missions, for he certainly has his share of them. His amused grin flattened upon taking a serious look. Kakashi, Guy, after the Suna mission, the 5th has been thinking that we should go on the offensive. You mean against the Akatsuki? Guy elaborated, receiving an affirmative nod from the bearded Sarutobi. Kakashi also nodded but in understanding of the situation. The Akatsuki's move in acquiring the Ikibi was the opening salvo. It's only a matter of time before they send a two-man team to Konoha to capture Naruto. It will be best if we meet them before they reach the village. What are the Godime's plans, Asuma? Asked Guy. She'll be forming the Niju Shoutai. Once word is received that the Akatsuki has been spotted within the country's borders, she will send the squads to hunt down the Akatsuki. She would like to capture a member for interrogation, but in case that is not possible, and it is highly unlikely, she said she will accept total elimination of the Akatsuki. The silver-haired, bed-ridden Junin bobbed his head once. 24-man squads should be sufficient, but even a single squad might not be a match against the Akatsuki. Hopefully, the squads will not be dispersed widely, so one or two teams can back up the one whom would make contact. Neither Guy nor Asuma added anything, knowing the plan was the best they could do under the circumstances without leaving the village vulnerable while not neglecting the paid missions. After a few moments of silence, Asuma frowned as he brought up the next subject he was worried about. Guy, Kakashi, sooner or later, my father's law regarding Naruto might need to be abolished. It didn't take long for the other two Junin to determine what the former member of the 12 Guardians meant. You're talking about the law that forbids anyone to talk about the Kyuubi, Guy said. Asuma nodded. Shikamaru already figured out on his own about Naruto being a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. He'll be in my Niju Shoutai squad. Ino and Choji will be assigned to another squad, but they are not aware of the truth regarding the Kyuubi. With the Akatsuki attacking, it is only a matter of time before everyone in Naruto's generation will know about his secret. I agree, Kakashi concurred. It will be best if everyone does know in order to understand why the Akatsuki is seeking out Naruto. He suddenly smiled, baffling the other two at first. Luckily, Naruto is already ahead in telling the others. On our way to Suna, he told Sakura and Temari the truth, and both girls took the news well with no hard feelings toward him. I don't think Naruto will have any problems, if the rest of his peers is told about the Kyuubi. Of course not, chimed Guy with a grin. They were all way too young or not yet born to ever experience the Kyuubi as the older generations had when it attacked Konoha 15 years ago. His grin widened with proud confidence. I know my team will accept Naruto fully. They respect him for being a genius of hard work, much like my Lee. My team too will no doubt accept him, Asuma grinned. Shikamaru already knows and accepted him. Choji has a too big a heart to hold it against Naruto. Ino might be shocked at first, but she'll accept the news too. Konoha's copy Nin continued to grin. Knowing Kurenai's team, I can't see any of them holding against Naruto for being the Kyuubi container. Shino will logically see it makes no sense to hate him. Kiba will be shocked, but he'll come around. Hinata will definitely accept Naruto fully. All three men nodded in contentment. Well, that settles it, Kakashi said. We'll tell Tsunade-sama regarding abolishing the law. Naruto definitely is ready for this. With that said, he returned to reading his beloved Ika Ika. After chuckling at how casual Kakashi went back to reading his book, Asuma turned to walk toward the exit. I'll tell Kurenai now, and I'll tell Tsunade-sama, grinned Guy. Good, the third's youngest son said before he opened the door. I'll see you later, Kakashi. With that said, he left the room. Guy turned to his longtime opponent, still maintaining his grin. You continue to get well, my youthful rival. I know Tenten will learn much under your tutelage tomorrow. Kakashi momentarily lifted his head out of his book to give a reassuring eye grin at the green beast of Konoha. No problem, Guy. After the village's taijutsu master gave a thumbs up with a shiny tooth, ping, he too left the room, closing the door behind him. Once all alone, the elite Junin smiled even more. Well now, I can finally eat without anyone seeing my face. He pulled down his mask, grabbed an apple off the basket on the night table, and took a bite out of the tasty fruit. The man commenced with his reading, turning the pages with his right thumb as his left hand held his snack. This is where we depart, Guys, Tenten mentioned as they approached a street cross. Neji had already left the group upon leaving the hospital, in order to go directly to the Hyuga compound. It was the same with Shikamaru. Now it was her turn for her to reach her apartment. I'll see you tomorrow for our training, Naruto, Sakura. She grinned. Bye. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Tenten. Naruto grinned in return. Everyone else also said his or her goodbyes prior to the bun-haired Kunoichi venturing away. As the remaining young shinobi continued on to the restaurant, Ino gave a small smirk, knowing the cost was clear. She grabbed Sakura's arm before speaking to everyone. Guys. The boys stopped to focus on her. Go on ahead. Sakura and I will catch up, we have something to discuss. Okay. Without even waiting for a response, the bleach blonde pulled her best friend along with her as they speed walked away. The boys were baffled at first, before they shrugged and commenced their journey, leaving whatever the girls wanted to do on their own. After turning the corner onto the street where Tenten went, Sakura finally spoke. Where are we going, Ino? This is not the direction to your home. Ino smirked. I know, forehead. We're going to interrogate someone. She let go of Sakura's arm upon spotting Tenten. Target is in sight. She sped away from the pinkett, who cried out for her friend to wait. Thinking of nothing but that wonderful bath waiting for her, Konoha's weapons mistress nearly shouted in fright, when Ino suddenly wrapped her right arm around her shoulders without warning. Hi there, Tenten. The long-haired blonde chirped in greeting. As Tenten let go a breath of relief that an unknown enemy did not attack her, Sakura came up to stand on the older girl's left side. What's the meaning of this, Ino pig? If you had wanted to speak to Tenten, why didn't you do it before? Letting a giggle escape her, Ino explained. Simple, forehead. I'd wanted to speak to her without Naruto being there. Mischief light blue eyes focused on wary browns, while green eyes blinked in confusion on what did this have to do with Naruto. What is it you want to talk to me about? Asked Tenten. She has a sense of dread, guessing precisely what topic Ino wanted to talk about based on the type of person Ino was and the hobby the girl loved to participate in. The sly Yamanaka didn't hesitate. Rumors are floating around the village that you were spotted with Naruto, hopping on the rooftops toward his apartment. You didn't leave his home, until 2 mornings later. What? Nearly shouted Sakura, eyeing the weapons-loving girl. I remember being there when you came down the steps of his apartment complex with him. You stated you were helping Naruto train. Which was the truth, admitted Tenten. Ino smirked at the new information. If that was the case, why did you spend a day in his apartment without coming out? Tenten frowned at the gossip-loving girl. Ino, you said it yourself. You were hearing rumors. I was helping Naruto train for 2 days, starting the day after my team and Naruto's team returned from Suna. You really should not believe in everything the village's gossip mill spreads. Remember the rumor that Suan-sama was dying, when in truth, she was simply found passed out on her desk from drinking. True. The slim blonde concurred before raising a finger. Yet all rumors have some grains of truth in them. Rolling her eyes, Tenten shook her head. The rumor regarding Tsunade-sama was far from the truth, Ino. She fed Ino's hand off her shoulder before continuing her journey home, speaking over her shoulder to the 2 other girls. Naruto and I trained for 2 days, nothing more. I'll see you 2 later. Yet, as Tenten grew farther in sight, Ino's smirk grew larger. Sakura raised an eyebrow at her leering friend. What are you thinking, Ino pig? Light blue eyes locked on green ones. She was lying. Having spoken with many customers to my family's business, I know when someone is telling the truth or lying. You know I can tell. Sakura nodded. Over the years, Ino always could tell when she was lying. It was a knack that no doubt ran in the family of mind readers, with most of them ended up in the Konoha interrogation and torture department. Knowing her blonde best friend, the pinkett knew Ino could easily follow in her family's footsteps into INT, enabling to gather and extract information from people. If Tenten was lying, Sakura asked herself, what was she lying about? She eyed her friend. Yet how can you be so sure this rumor is reliable, Ino? As Tenten stated, it's just a rumor. The leer on Ino's face turned into a knowing grin. I heard it from Mom, who was told by Daddy. Daddy heard it from Anko, who managed to get it off some Anbu. The Anbu were the ones who spotted Naruto and Tenten entering his apartment. I'm not so sure, Sakura said, crossing her arms. On the one hand, she could trust Ino's skills to tell Tenten was lying, but rumors were still rumors. Just because Anbu had spotted Tenten entering Naruto's apartment does not mean something was going on between the two. Turning on her heels, Team 10's Kunoichi headed back to where she came from, prompting Team 7's Kunoichi to follow. This is going to be so much fun, Ino chirped in glee. I bet something is going on between Tenten and Naruto, and I'm going to find out what. As she followed her best female friend toward the barbecue restaurant, Sakura's mind couldn't stop churning. If Tenten lied, did she lie regarding what she was doing at Naruto's place? It was odd for the older girl to be training with Naruto inside his home, if she had not left the apartment for more than a day. Then there were the faint traces of Naruto's soap and shampoo she had faintly smelled on Tenten. Why would Tenten clean up at Naruto's place when the girl had her own apartment and bathroom to wash up at? The more she thought about it, the more the pink-haired teenager became confused. What exactly happened with Naruto and Tenten for 2 whole days between the day they came back from Suna and the morning of Team 7's mission to meet Sasori's spy? One possibility left Sakura feeling a tad sick, not to mention her green eyes becoming greener. They always said that one should expect the unexpected. It was definitely true, when it came to being a shinobi. During a fight, you should not ever underestimate an opponent, for such thinking would likely cost you your life. A few high-ranking nins were known to being overconfident, thus they had ended up dead at the hands of a lower-rank warrior, who had an element of surprise. It was why the ninja population of Konoha knew not to ever look down at Uzumaki Naruto. Time and time again, the blonde powerhouse had proved he was unpredictable, thus the title of Most Unpredictable Ninja was well suited for the whiskered boy. No one knew what the Hokage wannabe would do next. Therefore, Tenten knew it should not have come as a surprise that Naruto was the containment vessel to the most powerful Biju on the planet. Yet nevertheless, the revelation was a shocker to the bun-haired girl, when the secret was revealed yesterday. The day after she had started her elemental training, Tsunade-sama had summoned the Konoha 11 and their Junin teachers to her office. Naruto was already there, but it was the first time anyone had seen him look nervous. The reason for his tense attitude was made clear when he, with the fifth's encouragement, told everyone about the Akatsuki and why he was being hunted by the S-rank missing nins. The criminal organization wanted the 9 Biju, and Naruto was housing the Kyuubi in him. With the exception of Sakura and the adults, all of Naruto's friends were indeed taken off guard by this revelation. Him being the Kyuubi Jinchuriki pretty much explained some mysteries regarding the blonde, the cold hard treatment of some villagers toward him, the red chakra he had manifested during his fight with Neji at the Chunin exams, and some other things. Naruto still had his nervousness after explaining everything, and no wonder he did. It was clear he was expecting his friends to shun him as the villagers had done. Yet Shikamaru lazily made a joke that Naruto was still a ramen-loving knucklehead regardless of the Kyuubi, and that broke the ice for the rest to all speak out in support of their friend. Tenten swore Naruto's eyes were moist with tears as he smiled thankfully for his friends being by his side. It was not long afterward that the Godime made a public announcement about Naruto's secret, thus ending the Sandame's law that it was forbidden to speak about the Kyuubi. A few villagers had spoken out loudly for Naruto's death, but many shinobi quieted them, showing their support for Konoha's Jinchuriki. These were the thoughts Tenten were having as she strolled toward the training ground, which Kakashi-sensei had chosen to begin Naruto's elemental affinity training. The huge field was ideal suited for the genin shinobi. After all, given Naruto could produce hundreds of Kage Bunshin without feeling drained, it was apparent he was the only one, as far as anyone knew, capable of using Kage Bunshin as a training tool. A half frown and half smirk formed on the female weapons expert's face. It had came as a surprise that Naruto had not even knew about the side benefits of requiring the Kage Bunshin's knowledge upon their dispersing. On one hand, it was quite a sweat-dropping moment to think Naruto for years was not aware of using the Kage Bunshin as a training method. On the other hand, it was amusing to see him nearly ripped his hair out, blaming Ero Sennin, aka Jiraiya of the Sannin, for not telling him sooner. However, the golden-haired boy made a self-promise to use the learning technique from that point onward, for he has a lot of catching up to do. With an amused expression, Team Guy's Kunoichi exited the forest into the training field. Her brown eyes made out hundreds of Narutos working on cutting a leaf in their hand palms, using only wind chakra, Naruto's main affinity. Off one side was Kakashi, reading a Ika Ika book as usual, while standing next to Yamato, who sat and held out a palm facing the Naruto horde. Turning to her right, the brunette spotted the Rosette Kunoichi of Team Kakashi. "Hi, there, Sakura," she spoke out in greeting. Sakura's focus turned from the scroll she was reading to her fellow Kunoichi. "Hi there, Tenten," she grinned back. "Made any progress with the fire techniques Kakashi-sensei gave you?" Removing a red-lined scroll off her belt, Tenten stared down at the parchment as she approached Sakura. "It's not like I can master any of them in less than 2 days, Sakura." She raised her head and smirked. "Neither of us can produce Kage Bunshin as Naruto does." "True, but least we will not end up extremely exhausted," joked the Pinkett, causing the ladies to softly chuckle at the truth. As much as both girls envied Naruto for having the chakra reserves to use the Kage Bunshin training technique, it did come with a nasty side effect of absorbing also the physical exhaustion of the clones. The blonde boy nearly had passed out after dispersing his first batch of Bunshins 2 days ago. Laughter dying off, Tenten nodded toward the scroll in Sakura's hands. "What about you? Made any progress with any of those earth jutsu?" The teenage medic shook her head. "Like you said, it's not like I can master any of them in just 2 days. Although I'm close to completing one simple D-rank jutsu." Turning from each other to the group of Narutos, Sakura sighed. "Naruto will obvious master his element at this rate. Did you know he sought out Asuma-sensei yesterday after his secret of being the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was revealed?" Tenten shook her head prior to the Pinkett continuing. "Well, he did. Given Asuma-sensei as a wind user too, Naruto figured he was the best to get pointers how to manipulate his wind chakra." Tenten nodded in understanding. "From what I've seen, Asuma-sensei pours his chakra into those knuckle knives." Suddenly an idea popped into her head. "Whoa, now that's an idea." Sakura raised an eyebrow. "What idea?" The bun-wearing girl giggled. "You'll find out, when I suggest this to Naruto." Instead of pressing, Suon's apprentice simply shrugged. She would find out quite soon anyway. It was barely 2 minutes later, when Kakashi called out for Naruto to dispel his clones and accumulate the experience gained thus far. The blonde boy did, with him falling onto his knees from the total exhaustion of his Kage Bunshin. Sakura and Tenten rushed toward him out of concern, yet Kakashi and Yamato simply strolled, having gotten used to this scene by now. Kneeling beside the whisker-faced boy, Sakura looked at her teammate's sweaty face. "Are you okay, Naruto?" Naruto gave a reassuring grin. "I'm okay, Sakura-chan. I didn't use many clones as I did 2 days ago. I don't want to fall flat on my face again." "That's good to hear, Naruto," Tenten said jokingly, making the blonde look up and realized she was here. "You'll just end up in the hospital, if you keep exhausting yourself." After giving a small chuckle, the golden-haired genin again grinned reassuringly, but this time at the new arrival. "Yeah, but I say it will be worth it, Tenten." With a confident grin, he held up a single leaf, which was shown to be 3/4 split. "Looks like you're almost done, Naruto," Kakashi smiled, as he and Yamato joined the 3 teens. "I say you'll likely have this done by tomorrow. Then we'll move on to the second phase of your element manipulation training." Standing onto his feet with Sakura following, Naruto gave a thumbs up. I can't wait. Tenten giggled, while Sakura shook her head slightly with a grin. The two adult men just grinned in amusement. Laughter dying down, Tenten cleared her throat to gain everyone's attention. Speaking of your element training, Naruto, I have an idea for your jutsu training once you master your element. Really? Asked Naruto. Yep, chirped Tenten. We just need for you to take tomorrow off from your training to come with me. You can continue your training the day after tomorrow. Now everyone was definitely curious. What do you have in mind? Inquired Kakashi. With shining eyes, the female weapons expert explained her idea. I don't know, Tenten, complained Naruto, as he leapt off the branch of another tree and sailed through the forest's canopy. I still do not like the notion of visiting that old man again, especially since what had happened last time. Flying through the air besides him, Tenten rolled her eyes. Come on, Naruto. I can't think if any better weapons maker in Konoha than Master you. Kakashi-sensei yesterday did